everything is connected. That's flow, and that the more presence you can cultivate in your life, the more smooth that flow becomes.
All right, I'm here with Brandon Harris from Premier Fitness Systems in Arizona. Brandon, if you just want to introduce yourself to the audience and let them know just who you are and what you do.
Yeah, well, first, brother, let me say thank you for the opportunity to connect and to just have this conversation to this platform. I appreciate that. So, yeah, I am Brandon Harris, known as Higher Human on some of the social media platforms. That's a brand that I've had now for a little bit, and I am a performance coach here in Arizona. I work with all types of people, all types of athletes. You guys will know the one and only Sugar Sean O'Malley through, your MMA space and through the Sanabul space, that I've been very fortunate to work with him now for, I don't even know how many years, but for a while. But I also work with regular people. I work with NFL athletes, MLB athletes, PGA athletes. I've had really cool career where I've had an opportunity to work with some of the highest elite athletes and performers in the world. So yeah, here I am today.
Sweet. Yeah. I mean, just off the bat, you said performance coach, right? So what makes you say performance coach when a lot of other coaches would say strength and conditioning? What would you say the main difference of that is?
Yeah, so words kind of get in the way, right? We use words, and words are like signposts. They represent something. So for me, when I think of what I do and what matters to the athlete, or to even a human, to an individual, is so much more than just strength and conditioning. So to me, performance makes the most sense in that to get to the top of any sport, there's so much more that goes into it than just strength and conditioning. So for me, I try to see myself as in a role of tying things together, of connecting the different variables, but ultimately just doing whatever piece or doing whatever part I can to help that person get to the next level.
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot about you. And just a little about you. Another thing that I've noticed, like we've met a couple times, and the thing that always sticks is your ability to almost, it seems like, slow time down and just be present. Like, what would you attribute that to the most?
A lot of work. In my pursuit, or my search for, I don't want to say happiness, but it's like, what is it all for, right? Like, what are we here to do? And for me, a lot of that boils down to connecting with people, sharing experience. Even I'd go as far as saying, experiencing and sharing love. And to me, the path to get there is presence. The path to get there is to be connected to the now. And it's just something that I'm extremely passionate about. It's something that I think kind of oversees, or connects all of these things together, is your ability to be present. And I'll go ahead and just say what's been really cool about working with Sean is to see that in him, and to see it work, right? Like, not everybody has the ability to be a world-class athlete. You have to be born with certain skill sets. You have to cultivate. You have to put in thousands of hours of work. But what separates the very elite from the elite, to me, is the ability to be present. And it's cool to see it play out and with Sugar, because that was something that I noticed in him from the beginning. I think that's one of the attributes that makes him so special, is his ability to work with his mind, his ability to not push things away, to not push fear away, but to welcome it. And then when he's performing, when he's competing, he drops into that state of just pure presence. Mm-hmm. And I know you guys I think, I've seen a video that Sanabul put out where he's talking about that after his last fight, that, he feels like he connects with his higher self. And that's been such a cool piece of my career, is to believe it. Now I would say, I'd go as far as saying, I don't even believe it, I know it. Like, there's a difference between believing and knowing. And at one point, I'm like, I just believe that this is what I'm trying to help people cultivate, is presence. Yeah, we got to do the work. Yeah, you got to be in the gym. Yes, you got to practice, in MMA, your jiu-jitsu, your wrestling, your striking, is all these pieces. You have to do that. Like, you can't just, like, connect and be present and be, here now and be a world champion. You've got to do that work. But once you've done the work, you've got to be able to trust it and surrender and compete. And that's what I've seen in him, which is so cool for me to be able to witness it and see it.
Yeah, for sure. And when it comes to that, I'm sure leading up, you didn't know for sure, but then when he gets that world title and he performs at that high level, the highest level in the entire world, you can really just show, and you can say, see, like, I knew it, like, the whole time, in a way. But what does your training style look like, you'd say, and how does it differ from most strength coaches or performance coaches?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't necessarily know what it would be like to work with someone else, right? I mean, I know the coaches that I'm around. I know the coaches that I look up to. And it seems to me we're starting to see more and more of these other elements being pulled in to people's practice, to people's training models. The breath is now becoming more mainstream. And I've been integrating breath in what I do for 10 years. Suga and I have used breath work to regulate nervous system and to find a deeper connection and deeper presence with ourselves for a long time, for not 10 years him and I, but like close to that. I think if we're looking at strength conditioning, it's the classic model, the science that we get when we go through school, or that we get in doing CSCS. That's a great base, right? It's understanding, we're trying to create physiological adaptations, and maybe movement adaptations. Like, let's say those are kind of the separate, like, movement adaptations, patterns. Mm-hmm. So if somebody is leaking energy, or if you notice, say that they're extending too much in a movement, they're leveraging their low back, let's just say, for stability, then we want to teach them how to be more efficient in a pattern so that they're not getting hurt. Then on the other end, we're looking at what physiological adaptations do we believe matter for that particular athlete to be more successful. Like, that's the game we play, right? Are there force producing gaps that an athlete needs to operate at the highest level? I think that's a really good foundation for a strength coach or a performance coach to have. But then as you work with more people, when you get into it, you realize that it's like, if all things were equal, the athlete that would produce more force would win. But that's not how it is in MMA. And that's really not how it is. Maybe that's weightlifting. Again, like, it's a very clear, like, the athlete that can lift more weight wins. Mm-hmm. MMA doesn't work that way. In baseball, it doesn't work that way. The ability to produce force matters, right? The ability to accept force, the ability to resist, like, those do matter. But that's not the athlete that always wins, because it's a skill sport. So for me, I try to look at what are the gaps, and then what, in the environment that I work in the gym space, but outside of that too, what can I do to help the athlete be more successful? That's a question I'm always asking myself. So in my training now, I believe the mind, and the athlete's ability to regulate nervous system is like at the top. And then we can use the gym. We can use traditional strength training. We can use that as a tool to facilitate that growth while also achieving greater strength, greater velocity, power, like that type of thing. So,
yeah. And that makes sense. And I'm sure like everyone watching this would love to work with you one-on-one and you like use that to develop themselves further. But from my experience, at least probably like 75% of combat sports athletes I've worked with, probably even more, completely neglect strength training in total. And they're just focused on the sport. So what is your kind of take on that? And how would you recommend like an amateur get started just in the first place from the ground up, especially if they can't work with you one-on-one?
Yeah, again, go back to MMA. There's so many elements that the athlete needs to become proficient at it, and good and elite at. So I wouldn't say that strength conditioning should be the primary priority. In some cases, it might be better for the athlete to not do it. I mean, that's what I do. But I have to say that if you're taking away the valuable time from getting better at the sport in weight training, then that doesn't make sense. Now, in a perfect world, there would be a place for it, right? Like when somebody becomes professional and they have more time, or even back to your question, when they're just starting, they're amateur. I think if I was going to give somebody an answer there, which is hard, is 2 days a week of like full body, where depending on where the person is started, what their training age is, you probably want the basics. You probably want to look at it as, like a tissue tolerance type of primary goal to start. So controlled patterns, actually being in a good position as you're moving through the range of motion. You look at more compound, ranges of motion, squatting, pushing, pulling, and really build a base of tissue tolerance to help support the sport in all of the beating that you take in training. And then from there, that starts to branch out into more, specific adaptations, like increase in power, velocity, speed, right? But I think at the beginning, it's really the basics. It's the, can somebody squat, hinge, push, pull, not load joints, load muscle, load tissue, and then progress that out, and then incorporate breathing, nervous system regulation, good ranges of motion, that type of thing as well.
Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. And what my question, like adding on to that would be if you were working with someone or if you weren't working with someone at all from the beginning and they came to you and they said, I want to throw strength and conditioning in, how would you, or maybe would you talk to their coach and see, are they good enough at the sport yet where adding this on wouldn't take away from their development? Like, when do you think an athlete decides that?
Yeah, I mean, it's again, you'd want to understand their bias and why they think they need to do it first. But that's the other thing is if a person is just adding unwanted stress into their system, then it's not a good thing. And that's the thing is you need stress, because stress is what facilitates adaptation. But if you're always getting beat up, MMA is a lot harder to control. Meaning, you're going live, you're gonna be in a fucking position. Like you're gonna be sore, you're gonna be tired, there's gonna be fatigue, because there has to be. Like, you have to go hard to grow. But then if you just introduce more of that through SFC, and you're just, again, beating down joints and everything is high intensity, everything is hard, I think there's a really good argument that person, that strength conditioning could actually be leading to increase in injury. You would never know, right? You don't know, but that would be doing this for 20 years. That's what I would say, is that most people are doing it because they're looking to be better. They want to be a world champion. They're invested in that, but they might actually be adding in unwanted fatigue and unwanted stress into their system by doing it because they don't have a base. And then they're just going hard at everything they do.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that brings almost another question is, if you had, say, for example, if you had an athlete like Michael Chandler come to you, who already has that base and that physique and that explosiveness, and you can almost trust him, that even if you just gave him a program, like, you could trust him to do it himself in a way and probably not get hurt. Would you say it's more important for him to take a step back from that strength and conditioning training and focus more on technical work? Or if an athlete that came to you with almost no base in that, would you say add that in now, even though once they're already at that technical level?
Yeah, it's hard to give a good answer to that because it would depend on the athlete. I think that the answer with the most integrity would be it depends. Gotcha. So if it's me, I would evaluate them. I'd want to understand their movement patterns. I'd want to look at, does it seem like they have compensations in how they're moving, how they're breathing, and then from there we would put together a plan. So often, what I see in elite athletes and really in humans in general is that the most fundamental movement pattern that we all possess is how we breathe. And it's rare that it's done efficiently. So if I'm looking at low-hanging fruit, that might be that could be, look, let's get you activating your diaphragm. Let's get you, being more efficient at utilizing oxygen, which is huge, right? So right there, if you could have somebody that's in really good shape, like they're a machine, they're still not breathing efficiently. And that's not that hard to teach. So that might be the place to start. I don't know if I answered your question. I mean, it would depend, right? So I also think you look at Michael Chandler and you look at Sugar. So, and I've worked with both of those guys. Their frame, their body is so different.
Yeah.
They're like outliers on the opposite end of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the ways that I like to look at athletes is you look at how they produce force, and some athletes are more vertical and some are more rotational. Those are going to be those like extremes. You also can think of it as gorilla versus kangaroo, right?
Yeah.
Kind of one way to think about it. And Sugar is as far as you're going to see outliers being rotational, Michael Chandler is going to be probably about as far as you're going to see it being more vertical. Like he's crazy, explosive, springy. Suge does everything rotational, right? So think of a Chandler is going to be good in the gym. They're going to be really good at resisting force, at producing force in the gym. A Sean isn't. Mm-hmm. But so like with a Sean, a lot of it is, to be honest, is like resisting rotation. Is getting him to rely less on joints for stability and to use more muscle so that he's not always rotating and jamming joints. And then Chandler is going to be different. And then within that, there's endless amounts of ways that it plays itself out. But that it kind of goes back to what you asked earlier, is that if a strength coach doesn't appreciate that or doesn't have that understanding, they're going to mess people up because they're going to try to bucket everybody into the same model, especially as Sugar.
Yeah, and you see that a lot, especially for people.
Is with look at MMA right now. Who's at the top? Yeah, it's guys that look like Sean more, right? It's not the stockier, crazy, powerful guy, because MMA is really this. To me, it's the ultimate hybrid sport. You have to have endurance. You have to have power. You have to have skill. You have to be accurate. You have to be your mind. I mean, it's more that it's more the guys that have range that are longer that aren't going to blow you away in the gym. But it doesn't mean that they can't get better in the gym and that it will help them. That's why, again, I'll go back to the tissue tolerance. Like, that's one of the things that strength training can do is increase your resiliency to stress, right? To the actual physical stress. I think that's a huge advantage for really everyone, but for somebody that, especially somebody that's on that end of the spectrum, that's like really rotational based.
Yeah, and that also makes me think about something else when it comes to Chandler and you talking about that stockier build. I don't know if you've thought about this at all or heard about it, but I guess Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler Conor said that they're going to fight at middleweight, so 185, which is 2 weight classes above both of their classes. What does that kind of tell you as a strength coach, or what do you predict coming out of that fight with both of them moving up so much in weight?
Yeah. Well, I'd say Michael, who I haven't had a chance to spend a ton of time with, but I have worked with him a little bit. He's an amazing human, an amazing athlete. He probably walked around at 190. Yeah, like his height, he's a tank, and he's at 190, he's still lean. So it's crazy to think he gets to 155. Conor seems like a bigger guy, but he probably is not by that much. Conor's long, but Chandler's long too. I want to say Chandler probably has a pretty long reach for his height. So he's kind of one of those like a Volk that has long arms, but it's a funky get. It's like this crazy outlier that he's not a short, stocky guy. He's not as short, stocky as you would think.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, to me, that'd be interesting because you can kind of look at it. I've heard people talk about the day, think that's the way it should go anyways, is that there should, the guy should be fighting closer to the weight that they walk around at, and he's healthier for the sport. And so I think at a minimum, it'll be a cool, kind of look into what that could be, where guys aren't cutting a bunch of weight, and we'll see what it looks like. It's exciting.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm throwing a couple questions at you, but if they gain that much size and that much new muscle, what would you do as a strength coach maybe differently without that weight cut, without the burning of that fat? And obviously there's some like catabolism during that cut as well. So if they're bulking up to a weight class, they're probably going to gain a lot of muscle. So how would that differ in the endurance aspect, do you think?
Yeah, in this case, I don't think Michael. I mean, Conor might be walking around bigger than that, but I honestly think he'll probably just be able to be like, he's probably walking around at 185, 190. Mm-hmm. So I imagine he's just gonna come into that fight without trying to bulk and cut. He's just gonna be where he's at. He's just not gonna have to cut. He's gonna feel better, right? He's gonna be able to fuel himself normal. He's gonna have, he'll have plenty of carbohydrates, plenty of energy. I don't think he's gonna have to put on weight.
Yeah.
And I imagine that Conor probably won't do that either. Conor's probably walking around like that, maybe even a little, I don't know, maybe he's heavier, mm-hmm. maybe he's not. So, you're training, how it is, when you're in a camp, like, you're training so hard in 2 days. So to be able to just fuel your body and eat what really you need, you just are gonna feel better. So it'll be interesting to just see how that plays out.
Yeah, and when it comes to Sugar's fight, this is his second scheduled 5-round fight, and it's going to be his first title defense as the champion. So with that first Aljo fight, that obviously didn't go the full 25 minutes. But with Cheeto, it's almost a little more expected by the common audience or the fans that it might go that full 25 minutes just because Cheeto's so durable. Obviously, Sean has that knockout power to just make it happen at any time. But how do you prepare knowing that there's a higher chance compared to other guys that it might go the whole way?
Yeah, everything just gets scaled up. You're doing more. So I think that's the common sense, is that you just end up preparing for 5 rounds. So if you're looking at, if a plan is laid out, you're just progressing it past that point, right? So it's like, if you think of you training for a 10K and how you have to be able to test and understand where somebody is. And then from there, you lay out a plan and you incrementally, increase the stress. So, that's what we do. It's been really helpful to do, certain testing to get a better idea where somebody's starting. So that's beneficial, like how well are they utilizing oxygen? What actually is happening? Where are we? So that then we can scale out and put a plan together and then retest and look at, are the changes happening that we want? What's cool with Sean right now is he's already in good shape. We have a really good base. He's done a really good job. He always has, about staying in shape. Like he's doing, zone 2s, like low aerobic work all the time. He's still always training. So we went out and did a trail run yesterday, and it was about 30 minutes hills. He's in really good shape already. So, I said, man, it's awesome that you have this base right now, because we've got 10 weeks to just scale that up.
Yeah, I mean, off that last question for me, when it comes to staying in shape and having that base, even when you're out of camp, what would you say for an athlete like maybe Paddy Pimblett, who blows up right after their fights and then has to do that whole, like, more work than they could have if they just almost stayed at least a little close to that shape?
Yeah, it pays to just be healthy, right? Like, that's what I've always said is like, say working with baseball players, where it's not an aerobic sport. Like, everything is like, aerobic metabolism is everything, but it's not an endurance sport. My argument was, isn't it beneficial to be healthier? Because you're going to sleep better, you're going to feel better, your mind's going to be better. So the less you fall out of that, the healthier you are, the better you're going to be, because it all matters. It's all fucking connected. Like, that's the other thing is everything is connected, meaning how I am right now in this moment greatly influences how I am in my next moment. And that just keeps rolling, right? So this could get kind of esoteric, and but it makes sense that that what I do now affects what happens next, right? If I fuel my body correctly, I'm gonna feel better. If I sleep better, I get up, right? It's just all fucking snowballs. So my argument is if you don't let yourself fall out, it's just so much easier to get back, to get back. And again, I'll go, Sean does such a good job with that. Look, he's a world champion. He's 28, 29 years old. Like, he should enjoy himself.
Yeah.
But don't, that's the balance there. It would be really hard. I mean, people that, if you really stop and think about what it would be like to be a world champion, to be on top of the world, and like how great that would be, but how hard it would be, and really, like, it's a beautiful thing, but with it comes challenges. He does a really good job managing that. So I have a lot of respect for that, because I'm, where I'm at now, I feel like I could handle something like that. I don't know how I would have handled it at 28. Yeah. Probably not well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this did not get too far off on a tangent. Everything is connected. And like, someone could ask themselves, if you eat shitty, how do you feel? Like, if you really tune in, right? If you really tune in, not, like, how do you actually feel? And how does that influence everything else? So So to me, it's just common sense that you're making it way harder on yourself if you're those huge swings. It's less of a lifestyle. So
Yeah. Do those swings get harder every time? Or is there like any hormonal effects of gaining that weight and losing it over and over again?
sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm not that's not my area of expertise, but for sure. I mean, again, I think you just look at it from a very broad, basic perspective, and yeah, I think it would be harder. I think every weight cut takes a toll on a guy, and the more extreme that weight cut is, the more of a toll it's going to take.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, until it's, I just think it gets harder and harder. I mean, yeah, to me, it's kind of common sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Awesome. Brandon, thank you so much for all your knowledge that me and all of our audience got to consume today from this. Like, it's always amazing talking to you. And every time I've spent time with you in person, it's just been awesome to listen to all the knowledge that you have.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it, man. Yeah, I feel like we could talk for 2 hours. So it's cool to have the opportunity to connect and keep doing what you're doing. You're doing a great job at it. So yeah, appreciate it. It's great to be connected.
Thank you. Yeah, you too. Awesome. Brandon's links will be in the description below. Brandon, I don't know if you want to shout anything specific out right now while you're on here.
Yeah, I'd love to connect with people. So people that, anybody that hears this, just to have questions, I'll always do my best to respond to people's questions. Probably the best platform is just IG for me, and that's the Higher Human. Yeah, and I think I'll leave everybody with this. It's realize that everything is connected. That's flow, and that the more presence you can cultivate in your life, the more smooth that flow becomes. And it's it's like, think of this, that attack and surrender can exist at the same time. Go back to like words, that we get stuck on words, that words are like signposts, so there are biases that are attached to words, but the point that I'm trying to make is that if you can cultivate a stillness in your life while also attacking the growth that you want, things tend to start to smooth out. And to me, Suga is a really good example of that, of one of the, he's able to cultivate more stillness than I've ever seen in an athlete in a sport that is the most intense. There's so much on the line, and it's a really cool. If you really watch that and you see it, like it'll start to make sense. It doesn't make sense to many people, but that to me is what we're looking at, or what matters. When you look at guys at the top, there is a presence, there's a stillness that can exist. So yeah, cultivate that in yourself.
Sweet, awesome. Thank you so much, Brandon.
Yeah, appreciate you, brother.